Yeah, yeah.
We are the epitome of Black female love.
It's easy for us as Black women to hold up the banner and the cause for everyone else. But again, who holds up the banner and the cause for us? What role does the church play in all of this stuff?
Is that we as a Black church are perpetuating the same behavior as a patriarchal evangelicals have been doing.
That's right. And guess
what? But it's the sisters in the congregation.
But it's a lot of times it is the Black women who bring us down more, or push or try to silence our voices more in the Black church.
Hold on.
Hello, my sisters. Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you all. Hello, 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 hello. Let's check in on Dr. Wright. We're going to start with you. How are you? We missed you on last week.
I am wonderful, wonderful, and my apologies again. I was stuck in an airport because this airline. We won't have names or throw shade at American. But anyway, pushed my flight back, and I ended up having the time that I thought that I was going to be in my hotel in Niagara Falls and doing the broadcast with you ladies. I was actually stuck in the airport waiting on the next flight. However, I made it safely, went to Niagara Falls, went to Canada, had an absolutely wonderful time with the love of my life. And worked on my suntan while I was out there on the boat. And let's see, spent much money on food. Ridiculous. You were going to pay for a meal there. You might not have paid for gas, but you're going to pay for that food. So had an absolutely wonderful time.
Wow. It's good to have you back. Dr. Bradford, how are you on today?
I'm still on cloud nine. I am still on cloud nine, celebrating our anniversary, loving on him, him loving on me, we loving on each other.
Looking amazing while you're doing it, baby.
Thank you, baby.
Dr. Wallace, in spite of that color you're wearing today, how are you today?
I'm absolutely super fantastic in this color. And loving it, while Dr. Wright was having fun with, I'm allowing the heart to miss while I'm in Oklahoma City, because absence does make the heart grow warm.
That's so sweet. Oh my goodness. Okay, please let us know that you are here. Hello, Yomi Clark. Let us know where you're listening from. Please let us know that you're here. Like, tag, and share. Hello, Arian Lambert and Regina Earls and Marjorie Scott and McQueen. Thank you all. Let us know where you're from. Listen, this weekend for me was words cannot describe. For me, it was my 8th pastoral anniversary. I'm finishing up 8 years at the church where it is that I'm serving. Oh my God. Right. I cannot believe 8 years has passed already. And when I say that my members rolled out the red carpet for me, they rolled out the red carpet for me. Some of them, they asked on yesterday and others on today, have you come down come down yet? And I said, absolutely not. I am so grateful. I'm so blessed to serve just a wonderful, wonderful congregation, group of people who are mission minded. They love the Lord, but I tell you, they showered it down. And they pulled a fast one on me, right? They had a guest video appearance from one of our co-hosts, Chalice Bradford. She didn't tell me. She saw me last week and didn't bother to say, oh, yeah, you can video. I won't be able to make, but I got a little video. And then I heard, she told me later, oh, I slipped in Christian Chapel folk that are on the line, did y'all know that Dr. Bradford slipped in on Sunday? Why y'all didn't tell me? Okay, why y'all didn't tell me? Y'all know I would want to see my sister. And so it was just a phenomenal.
They know what to do.
It was, um, I tried to tell my noonday today. I said, when we talk about God, we'll say, God is wonderful, but he's not, but he's more than that, right? That God is awesome, but he's more than that, right? He's a way maker. Well, he's more than that, right? And so when they've asked me, well, how was Sunday? I said, there's no word that I can use. If I say that it was amazing, it was more than that, right? If I say that it was wonderful, it was more than that, right? If I say it was the spirit with joy, it was more than that, right? It was, I am so grateful. And, people don't have to tell you that they love you. People don't have to show you that. But when they do, right, it's just like, wow. And so I'm so grateful, love, and wow, it's been 8 years in Dallas, Texas. Wow. Okay, Dr. Wright. I know we got a guest backstage, but on last week, we had an opportunity to open up with talking about love and marriage. And I had the opportunity to interview my co-host, and you weren't able to be available because of whatever issue that you had. All right.
That right there.
Whatever issue. Okay. You weren't able to be available. But Dr. Wallace talked a bit because she's been married for 50 years. Dr. Bradford for 27, and they both just recently had anniversaries. But you have been married for 49 years. Can y'all send up the heart buttons in regard to that? 49 years, right? 49 years, right? Amazing. And her husband is a wonderful man. He's a wonderful man. And one of the questions we were asked last week from you all was about, spouses and ministry. So we might have a chance. We don't have we don't have as much time as we did on last week. But let me ask you this first question. What would you say to young ladies or women who desire to be married? What would you say to them, married or today? What advice would you give?
One of the things that's really, really important is that you become friends first.
Okay, let me just say this. That's the same. Did you listen to last week's broadcast? I know you didn't have a chance to. That's exactly how Wallace and Bradford open up. But go ahead.
But you have to become friends. There used to be a song that they played, "Friends by Day and Lovers by Night." It's a tragedy because this generation, they meet on the bus stop at 4, and by 9 they are family. That does not make a marriage. It doesn't. You have to put time in. You have to invest time in. And so you have to become friends first. And as you know, I married the same man twice because I couldn't get it right the first time. So, I was that lover by he was a fine red bone man. I just couldn't help it. So anyway, I'm sorry. Okay, the spiritual side is back up. Become friends. Folks think because you saved, you forgot that stuff you used to do. But I had an image to uphold, and I upheld it. Okay. All right. I don't want to be censored.
Hey, don't go there, Dr. Wright, because Dr. Burns may have to tell you what her members ask her.
But it's very important that you learn how to become friends, because when you're friends, you know how to accept each other where you are, and you also know how to enjoy each other. Friends make adjustments for each other. Have you ever noticed that? Mm-hmm. Friends make adjustments for each other. Because you're my friend, if you want to go to the mall at 10, I'll go to the mall with you at 10. But guess what? Because we got a different type of relationship as in relationship, I feel like you ought to do it because I said do it. No, you have to be friends. And sometimes in that you have to make adjustments. And so learn how to get along. Learn how to say your story. Wow. Saying you're sorry is very important. The Lord taught me to say I was sorry to my children first. And I thought, what? They're kids. The Lord said, you need to tell them you're sorry. My child told me, he said, Mama, you accused me, but I didn't do it. And I had to go back later when I found out the truth and say, I'm sorry. It's the same way in your marriage. You have to be able and willing to say, I'm sorry. It's not that big a deal. Say I'm sorry.
Wow.
It just makes perfect.
Wow. Wow. So you already kind of covered another question I was going to ask you. So I'm going to skip to this one then. How do you solve issues that might arise? And viewing audience, we have just a couple minutes. If you have some questions to ask my co-hosts, put them in the chat. How do you solve issues?
You know, the Bible tells us that in the multitude of counsel, there's safety, there's wisdom. When you have a companion, whatever you do is not going to just impact you. It's going to impact y'all. And then it's going to impact them, the babies. And so you have to be very wise about what you do and not take on that attitude of, well, I just wanted to do it because I wanted to do it. I'm not hurting anybody. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Anything that you do is going to impact that marriage. It's going to impact your family. It's going to impact your household. So it's important that you come to an agreement. And guess what? Let's be free to disagree as long as we do it in love and we don't disrespect each other. I don't have that B in front of my name. I don't have that W in front of my name. Because see, God saved me from something. Don't try to find out what it was. I will fight. So we can be free to disagree as long as we do it in love and we don't disrespect each other. Understand that people are entitled to their opinions. And just because y'all married, don't get so spiritually minded that you know earthly good. You know, we won, so we have the same. No, we're not. My husband disagrees with me regularly. Disagrees with me regularly. And I tell you, one time he threw me under the bus because a couple kept reaching out to us and they kept saying, you know, I wanted to get together, and I was never available because I really didn't want to be bothered. They caught us in a restaurant and we're sitting there. My husband's eating. He never looks up. And the young lady said, oh, I'm going to get my calendar. I've been trying to catch up with you and lock you in. And I said, I don't think we're going to be available. My husband never looked up and he said, just tell her that you don't want to be bothered. That's what you said. I could have threw him in the street. But the reality was I needed to be honest. And so, what I wanted to do. And so, you know, you got to come to agreement. And I thank God for that. And I admire him for that because he's a true man of God. And he says what he means and he means what he says. And that goes a long way.
Wow. What are some pitfalls of marriage?
Pitfalls of marriage is when you don't invest the time that, as I shared with you, we've been divorced before. We've been married twice, and a lot of people say, oh, y'all broke up. No. We were divorced. We were legally divorced in a court of law, and the Lord restored our marriage. I thank God for that. I was never taught to be a wife. I was raised by a single mother who was very emasculating. And I have a very, very strong personality and a strong continence. And
you don't say.
These years, I had no filters. And so I might have said some things to where you thought you was on the computer screen because you'd have been frozen. but thank God for teaching me. And here's the thing. Be pliable. Be pliable. Be willing to bend a little bit. Not saying that takes your voice away. Now, I'm not saying abusive either, because I'd been an orange. I wouldn't have been on Timely Wisdom had I had an abusive husband. So, not saying in abuse, but be pliable and allow, y'all not right. Allow yourself to be able to say, okay, I don't need to say that right now. All right, I don't need to do that right now. It's not that serious. You'll get an opportunity to say and do what you want to do. But on the other side of that, respect what they want to say or do. It goes a long way.
Wow. I see. We have one of our viewers who's saying they agree they don't look good in orange either, but you're telling the truth. And so this one final question, unless one of our viewers has a question to throw in. You all know who were with us on last week that we spent the first part of the segment talking about love and marriage, because Dr. Wallace has been married for 50 years, Dr. Bradford for 27, and Dr. Wright for 49. And so taking a moment just to talk about love and marriage, because so much is consistently said in a negative way in regard to Black love, right? And Black marriage. So let me ask you this. Mama and them, got a whole lot of cliches, about marriage and what you should do, and the man and the wife, all this stuff. What are some cliches that need to be thrown out the window with the bathwater?
Keep your mouth shut. You don't have stay in your place. What is my place? I found out my place in 33 hours of labor and producing a 10-pound, 3-ounce baby boy. Was that my place? Now it's your place to change that diaper. How about that? So many things we have taught. Your marriage is tailor-made for you. God already designed that marriage for you. So you have to take the time and develop your skill set in that marriage. Ask God to give you the wisdom how to be the wife of a happy husband. They talk about happy wife, happy life. No, happy husband too, honey. He needs to be just as happy as you are. And then, ladies, I'm going to leave you with this, because I know Dr. Burns is going to put me off. Learn how to be the entertainment in the house.
Dr. Bradford, I think we have a guest backstage.
This is how we do it.
It's too late. It's time for the guest. It's time for the
Oh, Dr. Bradford, hello. Where's the mute button? Where is the mute? No. Thank you, Dr. Wright, for your honesty on today. And actually, thank you again, my sisters. Love and marriage, Black love, it does exist. It is important. It is necessary for our being and the full and our humanity. All right, don't neglect it in your lives. Dr. Bradford.
Oh, it's on me.
She's stuttering.
I agree 150%. Well, it is my time to introduce our guest. Our guest is none other than the Reverend Dr. Martha Simmons. She resides in Atlanta, Georgia. She is a native of Chula, Mississippi, and an associate minister at Rush Memorial United Church of Christ in Atlanta. She is the surrogate mother to Steve McDonald and James Gray, 2 boys she took into her home as high school students. Her work in ministry consists of she is a veteran in ministry. For more than 30 years, she has preached throughout America and in Africa and served in a variety of ministerial capacities. For the past 20 years, her primary ministry has been to the codification, preservation, and elevation of African American preaching for present and future generations, and aiding women of color in ministry. Through her work in homiletics, she provides theories and approaches that promote excellence in preaching and ministry. I can attest to that. Through her work with women of color in ministry, she seeks to offer them advocacy, mentorship, educational support, and employment. Reverend Simmons also has developed a reputation for being a mentor to young clergy, having aided more than 30 clergy in becoming senior pastors. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And she is a life coach to those who are older pastors. She is the curator of Preaching and Preachers, a bi-weekly bi-weekly Facebook live broadcast that helps thousands of preachers around the country navigate in today's society. She is the creator of the Women of Color in Ministry Project, the creator of director of the African American Online Lectionary. She earned a doctorate in theology, completing all classwork in pursuit of degree at Boston University. She has a Juris Doctor from New College of California School of Law, now John F. Kennedy School of Law in San Francisco, California. She has a Master of Divinity at Emory, Bachelor of Science from Bradley University in Peoria. She is well published and has a number of awards to boot. Come on in the room and chat. Welcome, Reverend Dr. Martha Simmons. Come on in the room and say welcome.
Hey y'all. Hey y'all.
Well, hello there. You looking good. You looking good.
Hello, Dr. Simmons.
Hey y'all. I figured I would wear orange. If Dr. Wallace could wear an interesting color. And Dr. Wright could do the nails, I could wear orange. I heard that earlier. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. We look good in our colors today.
I know I do.
Me too, girl. I'm with you, girl. And I got a pink pocketbook to go with it over there.
And it doesn't matter what we wear, we all look good. How about that?
Thank you. Let me reach and show you my orange pocketbook.
Come on in.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that look like one of them. Is that one of them Martha? No.
Let's see. You know what? Not looking on the screen to see if she can see it. Lord help her. Dr. Simmons, we ask all of our guests, of course, how are you doing in these COVID streets?
COVID has, I guess I've been sympathetic because it's been so difficult for so many preachers. And that's my life work, is working with preachers. And so it's been very difficult to see people struggling, to see churches closing, to see people just saying, I can't do this, I can't deal with it. So that's been very difficult. For me professionally, it's been just kept me busy. So I had a lot of work, and then COVID just tripled that, because so much of what I do for preachers was then needed. And people who I think thought they would never need the kinds of services I provide for pastors, when COVID hit, they did need it. So it has done nothing but keep me busy. That's what it's done. But like I said, my heart has gone out to so many pastors who are just struggling. They were struggling 18 months ago, and they're still struggling.
Wow. It's during the season, your broadcast talked about it yesterday. Churches closing, preachers really trying to navigate through this system and systems, and all of these challenges altogether. And one of the things that you have provided for a lot of preachers is hope and help. Let me help you through this. And what are you doing here? And what are you reading? And those are some of the questions that you're asking, kind of taking them from the pulpit and asking them about the person.
Yeah.
How important is it to be yourself in the pulpit?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you might as well be yourself, because that's who God created you to be. Authenticity matters. It really does matter. But I also know that a lot of preachers are afraid of being themselves, because they think that there's a certain way you're supposed to talk, act, look, all of those kinds of things. And they've been told this by their elders. So there are things that they won't say, there are things that they won't wear, and it ends up masking who they really are, and it's harmful. It's harmful. You should always be your authentic self, because that's who God created you to be. That is how you will do your strongest ministry. That does not mean that you tell all your business. There's a difference. And I think social media has blurred that line. There's some people who talk out loud too much. They put too much on Facebook, too much on Instagram, too much on TikTok. Okay? Just too much. People don't want to know what's going on in your bedroom every day. Okay? They really don't. So to say that you're the entertainment in the bedroom, that's enough. That's enough. But they don't want to know the details of every single thing. And so preachers have to, find that balance. But for God's sake, be authentic.
But okay, for those preachers who've just come out of seminary, may not have a church yet, or some who have their first charge, and they don't know who they are yet. What do you say to those?
Well, I think they do know who they are.
Okay.
They don't know how to name it.
Okay.
They don't know how to name it. Augustine said, if you give me a child until they're 7, I'll give them back to you. Because basically the essence of who that child is, and now we're not talking about mental illnesses and things like that, but in most circumstances, after 7 or 8, all we're doing is polishing and helping that child become his or her best self. So you really, by the time you're 18, 19, 20, whether or not you're really liberal or conservative. You really do know what makes you comfortable in life and in church. You know what kind of friends you want, whether you have them or not. So I think what the young preachers don't know is how to apply who they are in the circumstances that will come before them. They're not sure about that. They're not sure about that. So what do I do over here? What do I do over there? But they have a sense of who they are. It's just, how do I stand as my authentic self, given that there's so many circumstances, and I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to this. So the battle is figuring out what to do at various phases in ministry. That's the work.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, Dr. Simmons, we sometimes our guests are just starting out, and our friend Dr. Kelly Farrell is teaching young women in ministry how to preach. So I got a couple questions for you. What is your favorite methodology? And how do you go about preparing a sermon from exegesis to delivery?
Whoa. Okay. That's a big question. Well, I have to say my favorite methodology is the one developed by Dr. Henry Mitchell, the late Henry Mitchell. And I go through a whole description of it in my book, Doing the Deed, which has sold more than 15,000 copies. So somebody read it. And what it basically says is what behavior do you want the people listening to your sermon to emulate? Not what do you want them to think, but what behavior? And Dr. Mitchell named it the behavioral purpose. That's right. Dr. Bradford got the book. What behavior do you want them to emulate after having heard the sermon? And you put that behavioral purpose at the top of every page so that you see it as it goes full circle throughout the sermon. So, for example, let's say that the sermon, we got Father's Day coming up. So you wanted to talk about and help unforgiving fathers. So you used the story of the prodigal son and you showed them how the father in that story was forgiving, and how no matter what his son did and how low he sank, that father said, "You still my son. I'm standing here waiting on you with open arms. And when you come back, I see you coming up the road. We're going to throw a party." Because all of that other stuff doesn't matter, whatever happened in the past, because you are my child and I love you. So the behavioral purpose there would be to help unforgiving fathers become more forgiving, okay? And that, I would wrap the whole sermon around that. So that's my favorite methodology, but there are so many methodologies that people can use in preaching. The Big Idea by Haddon Robinson, the 4 pages of the sermon by Paul Scott Wilson, the thesis and the antithesis by Samuel Proctor. So there's so many ways to get at it, you know, but the bottom line for me should be changed behavior. It should be changed behavior. People don't come to church because they want things to stay the same. I believe that people really do want to change. They just need someone to tell them why and how. I think people do want to change, and we cheat them because we don't give them that much credit. We say, no, people really don't want a hard word, and Negroes gonna be Negroes. No, people, I believe, and it's been my experience teaching, preaching around the country and working with preachers, that people do want to change. People. Now, in terms of exegesis, that's a big one. But again, there's a process in doing the deed. And it's basically this, understanding 3 things. Number 1, learn to ask your own questions. Don't run to logos, a commentary, what you heard your pastor say when you were 10th grade in Sunday school. Learn to ask your own questions, number 1. So when you pick up a text, and I'm typically will pick up a text and look at it in 4 or 5 different versions of the Bible, including the Jewish Bible. As I'm reading it, questions pop into my head. Some old that I re-asked, some brand new. Like, what exactly does that word mean? And what does it mean in Hebrew, or what does it mean in Greek? And does that matter? Does that shift my understanding of the text? So that's one of the things you need to get in exegesis. The second thing you need to get in exegesis is an understanding that this text was not written to us. It was not written to us. So don't try to just preach it as if there's no context behind the text, because there is. And if you're going to preach the Bible, you got to preach that context. Then your job is to say to the people looking in front of you, sitting in front of you, or looking at you online, here's why what they went through resembles what we are going through. So you got the context behind the text, you got the context in front of you, and you've got to make sure that you do both. Sometimes preachers just tell you the story and talk about the context, and you leave basically saying, no, I really don't care what Jephthah did. I really don't want to know how many Jebusites were in that city. I really don't want to know. Those preachers miss the context in front of them, and they sound like dictionaries, and they're boring, okay, because they were not relevant. And so many of those preachers showed up during COVID when everyone got online. See, because we've always had people who don't know how to address the context in front of them, but COVID put folk online, and we found out. We found out that there are just too many people who are missing the context sitting right in front of them. And so their numbers, they'd have 20 people watching them. And then someone who was relevant and contextual would have 2,000. So they'd complain and give you all of the reasons that people didn't want to, people online, they've given up on church. No, Negro, they've given up on your boring behind, and they don't want to be bothered. They need help. COVID was rough. And so people got side preachers. And people who were used to just, one service, they could watch 3 and 4. They could flip around because it had to be not only biblical, but relevant. So you want to ask your questions. You want to know the context of it. And then you also want to make clear that this whole story, this whole Bible that you're preaching in terms of your exegesis and understanding it, you want to make sure that it has something to do with God. Okay? Too much of our preaching has nothing to do with God. I don't know what we talk about. It's like, we're going to give you 50 million statistics. We're going to tell you the politics. It's got to have something to do with God at some level, And so as you're exegeting the text, you're looking for, because it's all God's story. And we're always looking for, how did a group of people intersect at what point doing what with God's grand story? So that's exegesis in a nutshell. And you need all of that understanding before you get to a commentary, before you get to logos and all of those kinds of things. And unfortunately, preachers with little training or poor training, little time, all of those kinds of things, they typically just select the text and get a commentary or go to logos and try to say, I just got to keep showing up on Sunday morning with something. And so the exegesis is very skim, and we end up with thin sermons. Sorry for being so long-winded, but you asked 2 really robust questions.
That's awesome, Dr. Simmons. That is really, really awesome. Sometimes I tell my students who is benefiting, who benefited in the context
That's right.
of when the scripture was written,
Mm-hmm.
and who benefits now.
Absolutely.
Those are really, so you've given us and our audience some things to think about, especially when you talk about context and how can this be applied. It may not have what was written didn't apply to us then.
That's right.
So how do I make that apply now? Is there a way that I can make
it? Because it may not apply at all.
Right.
It just may not apply.
Right.
And so quit trying to force it, And one of those hermeneutical questions, one of the questions you should ask is, who's present? Who's missing? To whom is this applicable and why? Like I said, you got to learn to ask those questions. A lot of them.
Dr. Simmons, if I may ask you, you were talking about substance in messages, and a lot of times I've heard people attempt to equate their style with substance. Can you kind of explain or elaborate on that? Or is there a difference between preaching style and preaching substance?
Sure. There's a difference. The style is the manner in which you deliver anything, whether it's a sermon, a lecture, and etc. It's the manner, the posture you chose to take. That's your style. Some people are teachers more than they are the typical preacher. Some people can say a lot in a very short amount of time. Some people are long-winded. Some people can hoop. Some can sing. Some have a great deal of charisma. And so COVID has been their moment as, the charismatic people. COVID has really worked for them. So, everyone has a style. We've all got a style. Whatever it is, we've all got a style. But we don't all have substance because we didn't read, okay? We didn't do exegesis. We didn't know what we were looking for. We didn't offer the people what they needed. So, no, all of us got a style, but that doesn't give us substance. And so much of our preaching is thin. I mean, paper thin, because we do not read, okay? And I mean, read across the board, read stuff that you agree with and things that you disagree with. And don't just read books about the Bible and church. The world is complex, and God gave us all of this complexity for us to accept that the world is complex. So, I'm reading a book right now on psychology. I plan to spend some time this summer reading more books on literacy, because I'm really troubled by how many of our students are graduating high school and they can't read and write. And then as adults, it took me some years to figure this out, because I kept trying to figure out why all this teaching I was doing was not landing right. And I kept reading, and I realized it was reading comprehension. Grown people with reading comprehension difficulties. So Dr. Robert Harvey was on my broadcast about a month ago, and he talked about the whole issue. He's an expert in literacy and reading comprehension. And I mean, I think 4,000 or 5,000 people watched that broadcast because it resonated with so many people. It just resonated with so many people. So, you've got all of those kinds of things to consider. There are people who are dyslexic and they don't know it. There are people who have reading comprehension issues. They know something is wrong. They know, but they can't put their finger on it. I was just training a group of preachers about 4 weeks ago, and they were scared to death about failing because of their particular pastor. And then a woman just finally said, I don't think that my style of preaching is equal to the educated clergy. And so we talked through that. Then she kept going. And what she was really saying, without saying it, was her education level was bothering her. See, because you can preach up a storm without having an MD, right? And you can be an educated person without having a degree, okay? But what she was really getting at was her education level. And it was another literacy issue. It was another literacy issue. So that's just big issues that, that we've got to address if we want to preach better, teach better, be better students, those kinds of things.
Well, somehow, Dr. Simmons, how do we help those preachers? And many of our preachers love God and they love God's people. However, they barely got through high school. Mm-hmm. So how do we help them have that desire rather than complaining and looking down on oneself because I don't have? How do we encourage them to want more and to want to go back and get additional education? And you're right, some of it is a big fear that our people carry. And number one, sometimes in some places, our people do not get the best education.
Oh, absolutely. That's been one of the problems. It's not
always their fault, it's not always their fault. But somehow we have to help them become motivated enough.
Yeah.
And I think the more you read, the better you write. The more you read, the better you understand. And
yeah, but if you have a reading problem, you're not reading a lot.
Right.
If you don't comprehend it, you are just cutting and pasting and getting your sermon done. That's what you're doing. Or you're taking stuff from other people, like the guy who was the past president of Hampton, who stole another preacher's sermon and preached it at Hampton. And when asked about it, he said, you know, I'm the Church of God in Christ. We've always borrowed each other's sermons. Okay, that was his response. So we've got a society that does not say to people, you can learn, you can do better, you can have more, you can do better. We shame people. We shame people. And I try, as wherever I go to teach, I try to tell people, when I entered college, I could not write. I had gone through high school and they let me out because it was time for me to get out. And I had enough grades to get out. And I'm first year college, and Dr. Ron Kapersky says to me, Miss Simmons, you can't write at all. At all. Okay? And so I said, well, can I learn it? He said, sure. You need to go back to about third or fourth grade and get the building blocks. And I think he thought I was going to basically say, you know, just cuss him out and you know, and say, get the hell out of here. I went up the street from the college. They had a library there. And I asked the woman for third and fourth grade books to teach a child how to read and write. And of course, you know, they thought, of course, that I probably had a child in the third or fourth grade. So they were glad to give them to me. And every couple of weeks, I got new books to see what were the building blocks that I had missed. Okay. I taught myself to write. Here and there, I'd take a class when I could. I'd listen to people, read a lot, as much as I could, because I really wasn't comprehending it. So I'd have to read it 2 or 3 times. Then I found out I was dyslexic on top of that. Okay. But I knew that none of what I wanted to achieve in life was achievable if I could not read and write. I knew that. And so one of the ways that you encourage people is to ask them, what's the best, the highest, the biggest, the most that you want for yourself? What do you want for you? Okay. And when I pull them off to the side, they'll say things to me, well, Doc, I'd like to have a church with about 500 people. I just want to be able to feed my family, da, 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 da. And those who really want it, I'll tell them, here's what will get you there. And I'll say to them, your journey getting there won't be any easier than mine learning how to write. But do you really want it? Because if you want it, you can get it. And I can give you the steps on how to get there. Because not only have I placed pastors in churches, I've helped pastors learn how to preach better, learn how to read, learn how to write. All it's available. So I just continue to tell people, you're the biggest, the best, whatever you want, I want that for you. And if I can't give it to you, I can give you the name of someone who can help you get it. So we just got to encourage people. My hashtag on my broadcast that's now in its 6th year is do better. Do better, because I believe people want to do better. So I think we would help a lot of preachers who never went to seminary or went to bad seminaries, because we got some awful seminaries out here, really awful. Okay, is to encourage them and to simply say, you know, and I'm beg people all the time, please go write something. And I'll tell them, I don't care if you wrote a poem, a sermon. Just write something and keep writing. Just keep writing. So I think the biggest thing we could do for the people with poor education is encouragement and believe that they can do it. And I believe it because I did it. And I don't think that I'm any smarter than they are. Okay. That will go a long way. Just encourage people.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Okay. Let's ask you this. How would you recommend that Black preachers preach about sensitive topics like abortion, social justice, same gender loving persons?
Yeah. First of all, I would say know your context. That's the first thing. Know your context. One of my kids is a member of the well, actually 3 of my kids are members of the LGBTQIA community. And one of them has been pastoring his church, same church, for 14 years. For his first, I think, 5 or 6 years there, all he did was teach. Taught about everything. Taught about God, taught about the scripture, he talked about homosexuality, he talked about homophobia, he talked about love, he taught about everything, right? And so when he came out in about year 6 or 7, the people applauded. The people, now it's not like they didn't know already, right? But he never talked about it. He never talked about it. He just taught them and got them to the point where a Black historic church, okay, an old 1800s church was okay with saying, oh, we've got a gay minister, okay? And that's what has to be done, whatever the topic is. You have to know the context. Some churches are ready for certain topics. And if the pastor knows his or her church, they kind of know when that is. Other topics, they're not ready for. So you have to walk them through that getting ready for those topics, whatever the topics are, whether it's rape, it's infidelity. If you had a former pastor who cheated on their spouse, that may be touchy in a church. Pedophilia, pedophile. So you got to know your context. And then after you sat with the people and the people trust you, then you need to very carefully approach each subject and make sure that you know the subject and it's not a surface treatment. Because let me tell you something. You jump up and you do something controversial and you don't know what you're talking about, people are sitting on their phones and they're Googling everything you said. And the stuff you get wrong, they will blow you out the water for. Okay? You don't want to have, and young people, they don't care. They will get online, they'll tell one of their friends, and you will see something, you won't know who did it, but they'll be talking about you on Instagram. Okay? Or Facebook. So whatever the topic is, study it well. Study it well. Make sure you know what it is that you are talking about. So if you don't want any gay people in your church and you believe gay people are sinful and of the devil, if that's what you're going to teach in your church, you better be ready. You better be ready. Because you might have some scholars sitting in your church who will blow you right out the water. So, love the folks.
That happened here in Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah. And Dr. Simmons, if I can follow up to that, you both Dr. Bradford and I are part of denominational structures that have social creeds and basic beliefs. And so I hear what you say, and I'm able to hear it holistically. But for those of us, and especially part of our viewing audience that's listening that will come back later, how do you suggest to them? I know that we started your conversation about being authentic, or being your authentic self, but what do you suggest to individuals who love their denomination? They love where they are, but yet there might be some stances that the denomination might have that are perhaps contrary. So how, and let me do a do a secular approach. We have a Nancy Pelosi on regard to abortion, right? Who's leading and trying to help navigate that legislation. Then we have her church that says, okay, now you can't take communion, right? So what do you say to a preacher that might find themselves within a structure that they absolutely love, but yet when it comes to certain issues around social justice and other issues, that they might
Rarely do I run into smart preachers who are okay with all of the denominational politics. Very rarely. Okay. All of our denominations have cracks in them. We've got some polity that is sexist, homophobic. It's just traditionalism for the sake of tradition. I mean, I remember when COVID first started, there were AMEs and AMEZs who were actually online saying that they had to meet and talk about what it meant to have people serve themselves the sacrament, because that's against polity. And I'm like, are you all freaking crazy? Okay. And they were serious as a heart attack. And I mean, I had college professor, all of them. This is very serious. I'm like, and I'm serious too. You all are seriously stupid. You seriously stupid, because the world has passed you by. The people gonna serve themselves communion. And they understand why they can do it. But it became, I'm serious, it was a big, there were questions of politics, okay? The same for Catholic priest. It was the same. Can you're not a priest. Can you hold? I'm like, are y'all on drugs? That's how disconnected the church has become from the people in the name of polity, in the name of our traditions. So what I would say to preachers are, first of all, if you're very young in a denomination, give it a minute. And so you know what you're talking about. Don't just jump out there and start talking, I don't like this, I don't like that. You ain't been there long enough to know anything. So give yourself a moment to learn the polity. For those who are, you've been there, you served some time, you know your polity, and you know what it's about. It reminds me of Dr. Jennifer Leaf, who is AME. And she's, a member of the LGBTQIA community, but her denomination is like, get out of here with that. We ain't having y'all kind do this. You can't marry, you can't. And she has just gone about her business, still teaching and pastoring and saying, the hell with y'all. That's stupid stuff. Now, she's been in the denomination, never left the denomination. So now she, along with others, have started a discussion about what it means to that denomination to have LGBTQIA people in it, for them to marry, all those kinds of things. So they're at least having the discussion. So she chose to stay while also disobeying, so to speak, or going against the politics. But here's the thing. She is the daughter of a bishop. She got a PhD, okay? She got a good job in school. So she didn't care if some bishop said, I'm moving you and I'm not giving you another appointment. Well, first of all, they weren't going to say it because her father was a bishop. And you don't mess with a bishop's child. That's an unspoken rule. But she didn't care. She did not care. And there are others out there, and each individual regardless of denomination, has to have an understanding of what you believe and what you're willing to fight for. What you're willing to fight for. And some stuff in our polities are worth fighting for. A lot of it you can just ignore because it's like, okay, whatever. But if there's something you are willing to fight for, then you need to be able to stand and do that, but be aware of the consequences. Okay? If you're not aware of their consequences, then you're not an adult. You got to know the consequences. It can cost you your job. It can harm your reputation. It can do all of those things. So the question is, what do you believe? And what stand are you willing to take for it? Because it can cost you. And I tell people who will run and say, I want to be the social justice preacher of the hour, when they come for you, don't complain because you knew they were coming. Just stand your ground. Just stand your ground because, yes, they are coming. So, I would say all of that to people who disagree with their denominations. You've got all of that stuff to consider.
Wow. Thank you. This conversation today has been absolutely enlightening. We thank you so very much.
Bless you.
For carving out your very busy schedule to come join us, not the first time, but the second time around. Thank you.
You are great to hang out with.
So very much. Do ask if you will hang around. I'm back at stage 4 and viewing audience. You know how to do it. Let our guests know how much you've appreciated her and appreciated her presence. Thank you so much. All right. On next week, we have Dr. Wallace. You're muted. You're muted, Dr. Wallace.
Thank you. I have to be muted because I talk so much. I'm a Baptist, so I talk back to the host, and I don't want they can't get what they need to say out. But thank you, Dr. Burns, and I appreciate you guys not calling me out making a mistake last week with Dr. Lisa Allen. I am so grateful. I'm rereading her book, guys. And if you have her book on Womanist worship, look at chapter 6, chapter 9, and chapter 10. She's going to be talking about those 3 chapters, looking at how antebellum and how the Black church formed and how it kept some of the oppressive ways. Mm-hmm. She's going to be talking about that and how do we get past that as preachers in 21st century, almost the 22nd century now because we 2022. But yeah, that Dr. Lisa Allen is a scholar. As I was rereading.
Okay. So, all right. So thank you all. Next week, then Dr. McLaurin. We look forward to it. Thank you all for joining us on today. And Lord says the same time next week. God bless.
Same time, same place. See you soon.